Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and the author of The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life. If you'll visit ignitinganation.com and scroll to the bottom of the page, there's a little box there. You put your email address in there, click the button, a picture of the book. It'll take you to the preface and the first chapter, and I think you'll be interested enough to go ahead and order the book. It was a bestseller when it first came out in its original edition. This is a brand new edition, and I can assure you there are 49 specific life-changing lessons contained within these pages. This morning we're visiting with Barak Lurie, author of a book called Atheism Kills, The Dangers of a World Without God and a Cause for Hope. Barak is a former atheist who turned to God after using logic, science, and probabilities. Barak pulls no punches as he makes the case for the existence of God and shows the dangers of atheism. He beats down atheists with the club of reason, history, and science, and exposes atheists' flawed assumptions. Barak's many articles, podcasts, and speeches on atheism and its dangers have made him a declared and decorated champion of Christianity and Judaism and their crucial roles in all the values we hold dear in Western civilization. He's a managing partner of the firm Lurie and Seltzer in Los Angeles, California. He obtained his bachelor's with honors at Stanford University in 1985, his Juris Doctor and MBA at UCLA School of Law and Anderson School of Business in 1989. He's the host of the Barak Lurie Show, a popular and riveting radio program heard Sunday mornings on AM 870 KRLA in Los Angeles. He was born in Israel and serves on many pro-Christian and pro-Israel boards. Barak Lurie, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you so much, Reverend. I really appreciate that.
Barak, you were born in Israel.
That's right.
So take us back to mom and dad came from where? How many generations, Sabra, are in your family?
Right. Sabra's all down the line. My mom and my dad were both born in Israel. So we're deep into Israel. We love Israel. We identify very strongly as Israelis. I have an Israeli passport. I've been there many, many times. Our connection to Judaism is very strong. Our family goes back to Isaac ben Luria, the creator of the Kabbalah, as you know.
Yes.
And we're just very deeply proud of it. My religious experience is such that we were not really raised in a very observant way. We were proud Jews, but at the same time, we didn't go to synagogue. My father felt that it was not necessary. He felt it was a little bit silly to have to go to temple and pray to God and tell him how great he was all the time. In hindsight, I think he regrets that. My siblings, and they're wonderful siblings, I love them all. They are very disaffected people from religion. My brother's an avowed atheist. I believe one of my sisters is an atheist, and the other one is merely, quote unquote, spiritual. So this is what happens when you don't have a grounding, one way or the other, Christian, Jewish, or anything else. It is important to have that grounding.
It's interesting that from a legal perspective, of course, Josh McDowell and several others who are attorneys have written Socratic arguments, the case for Christ, the case for God, the case for faith, all based on legal arguments and even the application of American law, both at a federal level and local municipal and superior court levels, using the evidentiary testimonies, eyewitness testimonies, archaeological testimonies, archaeological facts, digs, discoveries, to support the evidence of a God.
Yes, I know Josh McDowell quite well. He's an extraordinary man.
Well, I'd be delighted if you read one of his books.
Oh, I did. I read Evidence That Demands a Verdict. I was quite impressed. I actually have a cute story, if you don't mind. I don't want to interrupt you, but at Stanford, this guy named Josh McDowell was going to come, and it was very well advertised, and Josh is coming, sort of thing. And it was really quite cool. This is back in 1981. And at the time, I was talking to a lot of my Christian friends in my dorm. They were Campus Crusade for Christ.
Yes.
And these were born-agains, evangelical Christians. And I always thought so low of them. I thought, what silly people to believe in God, to believe in Jesus for that matter. And I got to tell you, I engaged with these people, but I really respected them. And they held out the Josh McDowell book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict. We talked at length. It's one of those college things where you talk until 2 o'clock in the morning, that sort of thing. But I have to tell you, I respected them deeply. And I have them to thank for helping me think a little bit more clearly.
This atheistic identity. I always tell the story that every time I meet an atheist and they tell me they're an atheist, I say, are you sure? Are you an atheist? You swear to God? And almost inadvertently they'll say, yes, I'm absolutely an atheist. And so I've already introduced a God equation into this.
Right.
Define for me and our audience what atheism is all about.
Well, atheism, the way I interpret it, is the belief that there is no God. You are certain that there is no God. Many atheists will refine my definition by saying that atheism means that you simply don't believe in any particular theology. You don't believe that there is a God, and that's that. And just leave us alone. That's their very passive, sort of gentle approach and definition to God. For me, I believe atheism is the attack upon God, that they are at war with God themselves. That's how I define atheism. How do I know? Because I was there. As I used to say, I'm an atheist, but thank God nobody else is.
It's interesting that in the Hebrew, the God that they are at war with is Elohim, the creator,
right.
The creator of heaven and earth.
Right.
There are other Elohims in the Bible, but they're lowercase, and God even refers to Exodus 32. Don't talk about or to these other gods. Then in the Psalms, he writes about council, the entire council of heaven being he, Elohim, capital E, meeting together with the lowercase e, other gods. If in fact your position is that atheism is an attack on God, then it would have to establish that there is a God, and you are attacking his existence. How do you deny the existence of something you're attacking?
Right. Well, it's the atheist, and having been an atheist and know how they think, they'll say, look, you created this construct called God. You created this construct called Jesus. So I'm simply saying I don't believe in your God, your sky God, as they like to mockingly refer to it. We just think that no more than you, Barak, believe that there's an elephant in the sky. Well, we don't believe in your God. That's the way they look at it. It is a conundrum. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of internal contradictions within atheism. And most of it comes from the morality play. So that's where I see the contradictions most, where they believe and they espouse morality, but at the same time they are unable to explain where morality possibly comes from.
Does atheism parallel a socialistic, Marxist, or very left-leaning agenda, so that there is the removal of any type of accountability? Kind of going back to a modern-day Aristotle philosophy of, if it feels good, do it. There's absolutely no deterrent to it, which would be sin, accountability, atonement, repentance, and all those other things. If we serve a God who wants to first of all, establish a moral code for man to adhere to so that we are compassionate creatures.
Right.
Two, a God that understands that we err, that we make mistakes, and provides us with a methodology, both within the context of the Tanakh, the Old Testament, and within the context of the coming of the Messiah, if you're a believer in Jesus, and then in a return or a first coming of, in the Hebrew, Melech Moshiach, which would be King Messiah, the one who comes and immediately takes up the throne of Israel. There is no need for coronation because it's already been established that he is king. Okay.
Well, to answer your question, I deal with this in Atheism Kills, where, yes, 100% that the atheistic mindset is a very socialist mindset. It is rare. They do exist, the capitalist atheist, the democracy-loving atheist, the one that hates communism and fascism. They do exist, but they are the exception and not the rule. The rule is that socialism is a wonderful thing. To a lesser extent, communism is a wonderful thing. But they believe that very fiercely because socialism and atheism have one thing in common. They believe in that everyone should be equal. They believe in utopian visions. They believe that man must be controlled. Most importantly, they do not believe in freedom. They don't believe in free will. And only in capitalism and democracy that comes with it, free market capitalism with God, can you really enjoy the blessings of true freedom. Freedom makes no sense without God. So as a consequence, they embrace socialism because here's a system which is going to tell everyone how to behave with all the massive regulations that there can be so that everyone can do their assigned duty. Thank you very much. That is why there is such a pull towards socialism.
Is it not an oxymoron or antithetical that I should be defending something I don't believe in?
I'm sorry. You mean in what context? In terms of socialism?
No, I don't. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God, and I'm going to defend my position of what I don't believe in.
Oh, I see. It is a little bit oxymoronic, but I suppose the atheist will say, look, Barak, Reverend, neither of us believe in communism, right? We hate communism, right? And we go about explaining why we hate communism. That doesn't mean that we believe in communism, right? I mean, by definition, it simply means that we reject it as anti-spiritual to anti-human, for that matter. But I suppose your point is that by acknowledging the fight, then you are acknowledging God in its own way. Let me give you two examples.
Well, I want to take a breath for a minute because I want my audience to just weigh into what you've just said. And this is a position I've maintained for a very, very long time. If someone can argue in defense of atheism and give me there is no credible evidence for the non-existence of God, they can only cite an argument which must include God in it in order to refute his existence.
Right.
So if I address something that I'm speaking to that is non-existent and I do not believe in, have I not just validated by virtue of the fact that I'm arguing this, its very existence?
Yes, I do agree. And going back to the communism thing, you are arguing, for example, the existence of communism, right? When you attack it. So it's a good point. And to add to your point, the atheist, his strongest argument, or at least the argument that he thinks is strongest, is the presence of evil. Why is there evil in the world, right? And if there were a God, well, then how can he allow such evil to exist? And then he dismisses you, of course. But by doing that, he's actually acknowledging the God part of it. He's saying and defining that God must be perfect. God must deliver both untold perfect goodies and pleasure. In fact, he must deliver the Garden of Eden to you. That's what they're saying at the end of the day. So I understand your point, and I think it's a well-taken point. I find it fascinating on the evil side and also on the free will side, how they enjoy all the perks of civilization. They enjoy all that Christianity and Judaism have given to the world, and now they want to pretend as if we don't need it anymore. It's a fascinating concept. It's like you enjoy this beautiful garden, and you say, "Wow, what a lovely garden." But we don't need any gardeners anymore. We don't need to water it anymore. We don't need to weed it anymore. The reason why we're here is precisely because of those gardeners. Civilization owes everything to Christianity and Judaism. We dare not throw it away at this point.
What was it that made you think that you were an atheist?
Great. Wow, I love that question. I really like that question. I don't think I've been asked that question. What made me think that I was an atheist? I was 11 years old when I discovered that I decided I could not hear, touch, feel, see, or otherwise contemplate God. Therefore, he didn't exist. That's what made me think that there was no God. That's what made me conclude I was an atheist. And then I went on the attack. Then I started mocking those who did believe. I thought very little of them. And that is, I hope that answers your question. That's what made me think. But I realized I was in fact fighting him.
It does, and my response to you would have been okay, I can't see love, but it exists. I can't see the air, and I can't see the wind. I can see the effects of all of those things, but I cannot see them. Therefore, I must believe in the unseen, because I believe in love. I believe in the wind. I believe in a long list of things which I don't see. It's almost a weakened position to choose one non-material, non-visible, non-tangible entity or concept out of all non-tangible, non-material objects or entities. Why God? Why not argue against the existence of love, since I cannot see love?
Right. Well, it's exactly right. There's a chapter in my book, in Atheism Kills, where we talk about time, and specifically about time. But you could apply it to love and to music and to notions of beauty and humor, right? All these things that we know are central to our humanity, but cannot be explained through evolution, through randomness at the very least, right? And I say that time itself is a fiction. That's a human invention, right? Time does not exist for animals in the way that we think of time. A dog or a leopard doesn't have any sense of his future, doesn't know about his past, doesn't care about either of those things. They are fictions time is a fiction that we created. And yet the atheist loves time. I mean, he lives by time just like you and I do. The atheist loves love like you and I do. In fact, Sam Harris, the famous atheist, he had a debate in a very beautiful cathedral with a priest. And during the debate, it was interesting. Just before the debate, he looked around and he said, "I got to tell you, I'm an atheist, but I can certainly appreciate beauty. This is such beautiful." And I wanted the priest that he was debating with to jump in and say, "Why? Why do you appreciate beauty? Why isn't this just a bunch of bricks and mortar to you, right? Why don't you view this the same way that a dog views this building?" Right? A dog never looks at anything with awe, but you do, Mr. Harris. Why?
In your book, you address the Western culture, the Western atheist.
Yes.
We happen to live in a judicial system different than other nations, where in America you're innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
Before we go to break, I'm going to leave this with you to ponder. Okay? According to Hillel and to other great rabbis, we're in the year 5,778
Right.
from the sixth day of creation, from the day of Adam, according to the traditional Jewish calendar. Jesus came 2,000 years ago. We have eyewitness reports, eyewitness testimony. We have those existing testimonies. Atheists have had 5,778 years in which to come up with one shred of irrefutable evidence that God does not exist. The world has had 2,000 years of study, very intense research and study, and has yet to come up with a single shred of irrefutable evidence that Jesus was not and did not. Atheism has its entire argument based on what it cannot prove. As we go to break, I want you to contemplate the fact that you as an attorney would never go into a court to defend a client without tangible, irrefutable, and substantiated evidence. Yet, there are many in the world who take the position that neither God nor Jesus as the Messiah existed without the shred of evidence to prove the non-existent. And in the narrative, we have put ourselves in a defensive mode, feeling we have to defend our belief. And I say to you and to the rest of the world, you've had 2,000 years to prove to me a Jew, 16th generation, right? Every third generation a rabbi, knowing my roots, been to Babayar, been to Kiev, preached in the atrium at Auschwitz with a crowd of thousands around me. My Jewish existence, my Jewish life is irrefutable. It's unquestionable. And since in the Bible there's only two people, Jews and Gentiles, you're either a Jew or you're a Gentile. There's nothing else in the Bible for you to be. Yet no one has ever come to me with a shred of evidence to prove irrefutably that God nor Jesus did not exist.
All right. Well, listen, Reverend, I love your thinking. That's the way, and I can't wait to talk more about it. You are exactly right. It's a wonderful way to approach this.
Thank you. We're talking with Barak Lurie, author of the newly released book entitled Atheism Kills, The Dangers of a World Without God and Cause for Hope. He not only brings you a message that is directly refutes the atheist's indefensible position, but he also introduces hope into the equation. One of the reasons I wanted to have him on. And Barak is a Jewish-born, Israeli-born, what's called a Sabra, native Israeli, that believes in God, but has not yet made a decision to accept Jesus as his Messiah. I want to make that clear to our audience so they know that this is not a discussion. It is where we are using this, actually the very same foundations of logic and reason to have the discussion about the fullness of the entire picture of God and his creative power, God, how he manifests, and God and how he exists. There is no evidence to prove that he does not. and we can carry that through several other different scenarios. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere, and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Barak Lurie, author of Atheism Kills, The Dangers of a World Without God and a Cause for Hope. Barak, welcome back to the program.
Thank you again for having me.
Barak is a practicing attorney in Los Angeles and went on a journey, a real spiritual quest, was challenged in the face of his own unfaith, and looked to, was your intention in your research to prove and support your position? Or,
yes.
So you were looking to defend your own deniability in the belief in a God.
That's right. I chose to do my thesis at Stanford on a very simple topic, very narrow topic. What creates more evil, the presence of God or the lack of God, right? And of course, I narrowed it down a little bit. But at the end of the day, I not only became a believer. I like to call myself a knower as opposed to just a believer. I like to not only do that, but I came to believe in God not only because of the facts that were so clear, crystal clear to me, and the probabilities that there somehow could be no God. I also came to believe in God because I saw the dangers of a world without God. Historically and philosophically, it is the most devastating thing that can exist on Earth today. It's not radical Islam. It's not global warming. It's not hunger or poverty. It's not, world corruption or anything else like that. It is godlessness. A world without God is what causes all those things.
So
and that's the danger.
What was your source material? And I'm going to ask you this for a reason. Was your first source document the Bible?
No, it was not.
Was the Bible a source document in any point within your study?
Yes, there are two studies, and this is a very important part of the discussion. I ask my Christian friends and my Jewish friends, but especially my Christian friends, to remember one thing. When you are dealing with an atheist or anybody who is not strong on God, if you do not prove God, then you do not have Jesus, right? By definition. So, as I like to say, no God, no Jesus, right? So, first understand that the atheist is looking to mock you. He's trying to trip you up. So if you start off by saying, look, according to Luke or Matthew, Jesus said X, and Jesus walked on water, and Jesus raised people from the dead, and so forth, they're going to mock you. They're going to say, well, that just can't happen physically, and you want to believe that? That's your business, sir, but that's just silly. I don't see that here and today. So you first have to establish, like you're building a house, right? You have to, get the foundation done. Get that done first, and then we can talk about the windows and the draperies and what makes that house a beautiful house. And so you need to resonate to an atheist by logic, first and foremost. And that logic comes from probabilities, from a sense of how do you get to the random, how do you get through randomness to the universe and the beauty of earth and life and self and free will? How do you get there? So the odds are so staggeringly low that it's absurd.
The statistical analysis of the state of Texas being covered under, what is it, 1,000-mile deep stack of quarters, and the probability of me being able to reach in there and pick out the one with the red mark on it.
Right.
Those kind of statistical arguments and logics. Have you found that you represent an unusually small percentage of a world of atheists that cared enough to want to defend their position by going outside of their own denial, which was unfounded but First Amendment grants you the right to be an atheist. The
Sure.
First Amendment grants you the right to speak freely
Right.
for the advancement of atheism. The First Amendment grants you freely the right to print all that you should want to print with whatever your point of view is, as long as it is not a threat to the national defense and the domestic tranquility and the security of our nation. You're free to write. You're even free to write a manifesto, as Ted Kaczynski did. You're free to write. You're free to write it.
Right.
Just adding bombs to it was his problem. But his manifesto, there was nothing intrinsically, constitutionally wrong. He was not breaking a law by publishing and getting to be published his manifesto. The same way with the ruling for the Pentagon Papers during just saw the movie last night. Highly recommended. When Robert McNamara, the 30-year study that documented our failures in Vietnam, the Pentagon Papers, that they were made public, and the Supreme Court voted 6-3 in favor of saying that the press's responsibility is to keep the government from overreaching, and that there are certain things. And I think this is where probably Tom Fenton's organization, the FOIA Act, became a part of. That's probably one of the cited cases in there for why we should have access to public information. But in atheism, no need to write a book on why to be an atheist.
Well, there are plenty of books on that, no doubt, and they're very shallow books, but nevertheless, there are books about them. Look, I mean, you asked me about whether I've gone outside of it, and I proudly say yes. And I think most atheists are afraid to go outside of their comfort zone in believing that there is no God. I was not afraid. I was always ready to talk and debate and get into it with my Christian friends, my Jewish friends, anybody who believed in God. I was ready to get in there. And in the process, I ended up believing in God. I understood that I was lacking something. And it wasn't a faith jump, by the way. Part of me wishes that it were, but I never came to God because of pure faith. I came to God because of logic and numbers. And now I feel like I appreciate the beauty of God all the more.
So the Barak the atheist and the Barak the believer in God, is there a clear demarcation that we can look at you, your family looks at you, your community looks at you and says, we saw something change? Or is this purely an internal rationalization, justification, and my personal beliefs in God? Or is this something that was life-changing?
It was life-changing, and there was a cataclysmic moment, if you like, and that was upon discovery of the concept of free will. When I realized that free will had to be, and I accepted that free will philosophically, logically, must come from an outside force. It cannot come about randomly through evolution or otherwise. Once I understood that, the door began to open. And I remember coming out of my study session or whatever it might have been, and came out to my Christian friends of all people, and I said, can I gather you around for a second? And I said to them, I've come to believe that there is a God, and I'm excited about it. I got to tell you, Reverend, I was very nervous about it. I felt almost embarrassed about it, but it was such a release to me. Mm-hmm. And then more things came to me. It was as if the door had opened and all sorts of other goodies were coming my way. I started talking about and understanding different arguments for God. What you and I just spoke about beauty, the sense of freedom, the sense of love, sense of purpose, sense of time, the past and the present. These things are extraordinary things. that I had been not even thinking about. It was just the free will door that made the difference. And then it exploded into so many other things. So yes, there was a demarcation of approximately my junior year at Stanford, where that big moment happened, and I'm very proud of it at the same time. Look, you've got to accept. I think that to not believe in God at the age of say 25 or later, it's a little bit childish. I hate to insult any of our viewers who may be atheists still, but if you're 25 years old and you do not yet understand that there is a ruler of the universe, you need to understand that's a very immature philosophy. And I feel for you. You are missing out, not just because God is somehow going to punish you for not believing in him. Neither you nor I believe in that necessarily, Reverend. But you're missing out because on all the great joys and discoveries that God allows you to embrace. Science itself was an invention of Christianity, the way we think of it today.
What was your wife's position on God?
She is a devout believer in God herself, but more as somebody who came to it from faith. She never had a moment of change. She never imbued herself with understanding why God exists. So she was just more traditional. She loves going to synagogue. But for her, it's always a question of faith. She doesn't, she never questioned it. I think it's healthy to question. And I think by questioning, you get to a stronger position.
Pew and Gallup, both the two most reputable polling firms in America, both came to a similar figure that about 10% of Americans say they do not believe in God, and this figure has been slowly creeping up over the decades.
That's right.
One of their larger points where people are embarrassed to tell strangers they don't believe in God, which is really something that is so interesting to me, because all faith-based systems promote, including Judaism, and Judaism is more through works, through philanthropies. I was raised to be a mensch. I was still today use the same standards for decorum, behavior, language, helping open up a car door, helping with the coat, helping an old lady across the street, helping load somebody's groceries, was my grandmother teaching me to be a representative of a good young Jewish man. But all other faiths, both through practice and through attire, identify with their belief system, but according to their research, they found that atheists were embarrassed to tell strangers they don't believe in God.
That is surprising to me. I mean, on the one hand, I'm glad to hear that. On the other hand, I know as a former atheist that I was very happy to tell people that I was an atheist. I was never embarrassed about it. I felt that they should be embarrassed to believe in to use their phrase, a sky god, to believe that a man could be the son of this god, that he could walk in water, that you believe in these miracles, and I should be the one embarrassed to not believe in them. That was the approach that I took. But I'm pleased to hear that, Reverend. That is important. At the same time, both of us should be concerned about the rise of godlessness, the rise of atheism, generally speaking, in this country. It's extremely high in Europe. Here it's 10%, like you said. In Europe, it hovers between 25% and 45%, depending on the country that you're in.
Right.
Europe. It's I would go so far as to say terrifying.
When you were sworn in as an officer of the court, did you have to swear in with your hand on a Bible or the mention of God in any way when you became a lawyer and an officer of the court?
I did not have to. There was no Bible, I know that. And we did have to raise our right hand. We did have to swear or affirm our beliefs and not our beliefs, but our willingness to uphold the Constitution and so forth. But no, God was not invoked. You can, of course, do that if you wanted to, but no.
Right. Have you ever been sworn in to give testimony where you had to, so help you God?
Yes, I actually encouraged it. There was one time where I was a witness at trial and on a fairly large matter, and the person said, "Will you agree to and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth?" And that was it. And I leaned forward and I said, "Yes, so help me God." So I wanted to make it very clear that God was part of this. I think that giving truthful testimony is a wonderful testament for God. It's one of the commandments, not just in court, but otherwise as well. Very important stuff. Look,
do you find atheism as a masquerade for the advancement of a political ideology which has become a violation of the Constitution, where the government shall not establish a state religion? That's the entirety of the Constitution. However, under new rulings today, there's things, now we are an independent, our ministry owns this television network, and we are commercial free. Therefore, we have nobody who can tell us, well, you can't talk about homosexuality, you can't talk about this, you can't say this, you can't, or we're going to pull our advertising. We don't have advertisers. We're supported by our viewing audience, over 500,000 social media followers. We're prime time in the Middle East, and then we're prime time for 24 hours across the world talking about these kinds of issues. But do you find that globally, atheism is a pathway to unify a community around a non-existent concept, non-existent? We all agree God does not exist. So if we don't agree God doesn't exist, then we become the rule makers. And if we become the rule makers, then let's all be treated the same. It was the kibbutzim from Israel in the very first wave. Everybody was treated the same. It was a socialistic model before the Moshav was introduced to capitalism. But do you find that this is a covering? That this is actually a masquerade for Stalinism, for communism, for socialism, for every other socialistic agenda, that if I can increase and advance the cause of atheism, I'm pulling with me a wagon load of political ideologies which are anti-American, anti-Constitution, anti-freedoms, that allow me for the individual expression, and ultimately wind up becoming what we now see as Common Core, what we see now as the advancement of the state-sponsored Darwinism, the state-sponsored curriculum. That is a state-sponsored religion, which is called secularism.
Right.
It doesn't come under the brand of atheism, but do you see this as a covering, and this is part of that agenda?
Yes. The answer is yes, and I don't even want to say no, but yes with a caveat. I think that there is an ideology out there that, and a push toward exactly what you're saying, that they are pushing for secularism, which is itself a religion. They are pushing for socialism at the end of the day, whether they realize it or not. But that is the push. And they do so for a variety of reasons. But there are many powerful forces out there that wish to undermine American democracy. But more importantly, they wish to undermine faith in God in American democracy as well. Now, I say with a caveat, because most of the people who go along with the program, they're being fed lies. They're being told that this is good and compassionate and the right thing to do, and that if you go along with them, then you care about the poor. So most of the people that are going along for this ride and are participants in this ride are what Lenin would refer to as useful idiots, right? Where they they don't realize that they're engaging in this behavior.
All right, Counselor, you have actually 2 minutes
All right.
to close.
All right.
So give me your best closing argument. You've got 2 minutes. Go.
All right. The biggest mantra that you hear from atheists and from the world at large, even from some believers, is that religion has caused more deaths than anything else. And I'm sad to say that a lot of people, even believers, actually accept this. And they feel, well, we still think that good things come from this religion business. First of all, the mantra is 100% wrong. It is so demonstrably false just by looking at the 20th century alone. Fascism and communism were both godless enterprises, and that atheism was at the core of both of those ideologies. How many people died in the 20th century alone? In fact, in the 50 years of the 20th century, you're talking about upwards of 200 million people, to say nothing of all the rapes, to say nothing of all the tortures, to say nothing of all the imprisonment and the enslavement of people. Over 1 billion people were enslaved as a result of atheism. Now, you compare that to the supposed horrors and deaths caused by religion, even if you were to agree with them that they were caused by religion, it's a drop in the bucket. There is no comparison whatsoever. That is the main mission of this book, to show that atheism kills. The fact that religion may have killed here and there is but a drop in the bucket, and it's not even relevant to the issue. Atheism is the true killer.
There's only one religion that has a document which clearly states the action of killing on behalf of God. It's called the Quran. All other writings, all other sacred texts are based on the loving God, whether or not it's Taoism, Buddhism, regardless of what it is, but there's only one book, and that is the Quran, which advances killing to convert. So atheism, this lack of belief in God, my question to you, because we are just now out of time, is the atheist lives a hopeless existence.
Yes.
There is no future. There is no eternity past, nor is there an eternity future for them. They know that they have a beginning, they know they have a middle, and they know they have an end. And for them, it ends there, and it ends without hope. You dust of the earth you become, dust of the earth you will remain. There is no hope. And we look back early on to the concept of Abraham and Isaac in the belief of resurrection, because of a God who would restore, even bring back from the dead. An atheist does not have that hope. That kills the spirit, and it winds up ultimately killing man. Barak Lurie, thank you so much for sharing your new book, Atheism Kills, The Dangers of a World Without God and Cause for Hope. Click on Books and Media on the IgnitiaNation.com page and order a copy for yourself. Barak Lurie, I know this wasn't the interview you expected, but it's
it was.
But it's the one you got. So thank you
so much.
Thank you so much for being with us. God bless you, my friend.
God bless.
Thanks. All right, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.